Okay, here we go. Definitions of trigonometric functions in terms of right triangles. Today our goal is to be able to solve right triangles. Do a little bit of what we call right triangle trigonometry. I'm going to speak in as plain of terms as I possibly can because I believe that you learn this in geometry, but probably didn't learn it really, really well. And so here we go, trying to work through it. We're going to say that this is the angle of the triangle we're considering, which we call theta. And we have to be given a right triangle. We say that a triangle really has three legs to it. It has what we call the opposite, the adjacent, and the hypotenuse. Now let's understand what those three words mean. Right now, I'm saying that Michaela is sitting adjacent to RJ. What does that mean? Next to. Adjacent means next to. So if you look at this angle right here, theta is an angle made up of these two sides. Everybody agree that that angle is made up of those two sides? Those two sides, this one is the hypotenuse. It's the hypotenuse because it's the longest side of a right triangle, and it's across from the 90-degree angle. The other side is the adjacent side. It's the adjacent side because it sits next to the angle. The other side is opposite because it sits across from the angle. It sits on the other side of the angle. That's how we determine opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. So therefore, we have to be able to identify sine, cosine, and tangent. And sometimes people use this kind of short acronym or symbol. It's a SO, CA, TOA. S stands for sine, O and H stand for opposite and hypotenuse. So sine is opposite divided by hypotenuse. C stands for cosine, and A and H stand for, so I have adjacent divided by hypotenuse. T stands for tangent, O and A stand for opposite over adjacent. We're not going to worry about the other three, cosecant, secant, cotangent, because they really aren't necessary as we move forward with these type of problems. So the first one I'm going to do is find the exact value of 6. We're going to do 3. Trigonometric functions for theta. We're going to say theta is here. It says given the legs of the triangle are 15 and, oh, I made a mistake there. It should be 8. 15 and 8. So I have a triangle of legs 15 and 8. And I want to write an expression for sine of theta, cosine of theta, and tangent of theta. In order to find sine or cosine, what side do I need to find? The hypotenuse. How can I find the hypotenuse for a right triangle? Okay. The Pythagorean Theorem. Since this is a right triangle, we know that a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. And c refers to the hypotenuse of the triangle. So I have 15 squared plus 8 squared is equal to c squared. Anybody know what 15 squared is? 225. Plus 8 squared, 64, is c squared. What is 225 plus 64? 289. What number do you square to get 289? 17. So it turns out that this triangle is 8, 15, 17. Now what I need to do is I need to list opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. Which one is 17? Hypotenuse. Which one is 15? It's the opposite. And which one is 8? Adjacent. So sine of theta is opposite over hypotenuse. It's 15 over 17. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. 8 over 17. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. It's 15 over 8. How's that? Is this a nice review of what you first learned in geometry? Okay, so the second step is we actually want to solve the triangles. So let's skip that next step because it seems like you guys are understanding what I'm bringing you through right now. Let's go to example 3, where now we are given some angles. So one thing that's nice about trigonometry is that so far what you've learned is that if you have 2 legs, you can then find the third leg using Pythagorean Theorem. But in trig, if you're given 1 leg at an angle, you can find a missing leg. So what I do is I mark this as a 90-degree angle. I have 42 degrees. What is x? The adjacent, the hypotenuse, or the opposite? Hypotenuse. Is 9 the opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse? It's the opposite. So look at what I have. I'm given the opposite. I'm looking for the hypotenuse. So do I use sine, cosine, or tangent? Very good. I use sine. As sine is opposite and the hypotenuse, right? Cosine is adjacent and hypotenuse. Does it help if I write this up there? Opposite and hypotenuse, I use sine. Yes? Does that help a little bit? Okay, so I have the sine of 42 degrees is then equal to, what's the opposite? 9 divided by what's the hypotenuse? X. So I'm just trying to solve that equation. I make sure I put sine of 42 over 1. And I'm just going to cross multiply. 9 times 1? 9 equals x sine of 42 degrees. Sine of 42 is just a number. What would I do with the sine of 42 in order to solve for x? I would divide it. So you get x is 9 divided by the sine of 42. So take out whatever calculator device you have right now, and let's make sure that you can come up with this value, because everybody's is different. First of all, if anybody has a calculator that looks like mine, your calculator has 2 ways of working. It can work in radians or degrees. Press mode, and it will tell you which one you're working in. I'm currently working in degrees. If you're working in radians, just go down and move over and select degrees. Okay. You round nearest 100. So now I take 9 divided by the sine of 42, and I get 13.45. It's okay. Did anybody get something other than 13.45? Okay, so can we talk about exactly what JGL did? Because I would encourage some people to do that. If you take the sine of 42, you get 0.6691. So you do 9 divided by 0.6691. So 9 divided by 0.6691, I get 13.45. You okay with that? I'm getting a couple stares. We need to try. Okay. So instead of doing 9 divided by sine of 42, if you just do sine of 42 first, 0.6691, that's what that is. Is that better? Okay. We're not going to find all of them. In this case, we're just going to find x. Let's do this one together. You help me, and then you're going to do the next one on your own, and then we're going to start working on your assignments to see where you can handle that, okay? So this is 63. So which side is 14? Which side is 14? Hypotenuse. Very good. Which side is x? It's the adjacent. So will I use sine, cosine, or tangent? Why do I use cosine? Adjacent and hypotenuse. So I have the cosine of what's my angle? 63 is equal to? It's adjacent over hypotenuse. So yep, it's x over 14. So look at your first problem. X ended up being in the denominator. Here, x is in the numerator. It changes depending on the problem. When I cross multiply, I get x times 1 is x. And over here, I get 14 times a cosine of 63. So let's try that. 14 cosine of 63. And I get 6.36. Does it make sense that x 6.36 should be less than 14? Y should be smaller than 14. Because the hypotenuse is going to be the longest leg of the triangle, right? You try, see if you do the last one, okay? Try the last one. Okay, people have had some time to kind of try it. Let's see where we get. I saw just about everybody at hypotenuse here. Is x the opposite or the adjacent? It's the opposite. Because it sits across from the 27-degree angle. If I draw the 27-degree angle, you can see that x is across from it. So I have the opposite, and then the other side is the adjacent. So if you are given the adjacent and looking for the opposite, which of the trig functions do you use? Tangent. So we set up tangent of what? 27 is equal to, what's the opposite? X over 9.4. And we cross multiply. X times 1 is x. And we get 9.4 times the tangent of 27. 9.4 tangent of 27. 4.79. All right. Flip to your assignment. Let's do a couple of problems on your assignment together so you can see exactly what we're going to do and what you're going to be expected to do eventually when we get to that test, okay? Today we're going to work on the left side. Tomorrow we're going to work on the right side. You don't get a new worksheet tomorrow. This is the piece we're going to work on. Here's what you have to know. When we're solving for right triangles, we're always going to say that C is the 90-degree angle. So we're given a triangle ABC. We're going to call this angle the 90-degree angle. We're going to call that angle C. It doesn't matter what you put for angle A or B. You can put A up top and B up on bottom, or the other way around. I can put A here and B here. Question. Why didn't give you one? Did they give you anybody? Okay. Here we go. Everybody see how I have the angles? The angles are the capital letters. The sides are the smaller letters. Where do the sides go? They go opposite the angles. So side A goes opposite angle A. Remember that from geometry? That's why we're going step by step. We'll take our time with this, folks. This is something you can do. Now I've got angle B. I go across from angle B to get side B. I've got angle C. I'm going to go across from angle C to get side C. Yep, lowercase. We're all okay with that? All right. There's 6 blanks that we want to find. What are some other things that are obvious that you can write down? C is 8, and angle B is 32. You write down what you are given, and then I don't make that phone call. Okay? Excellent. So we all agree that these first 3 are not too bad to find, right? So JGL says we've got another one that's pretty easy to find. A is easy to find because all the angles of a triangle have to add up to 180. So if I take my calculator and I go 180 and I subtract 90 and I subtract 32, I get 58. Is everybody okay with that? All right, now here's where we make a choice. RJ, you tell me, do you want to use angle B, 32 degrees, or do you want to use angle A, 58 degrees? It's up to you. She wants to use angle B, which is 32 degrees. Everybody okay with that? RJ, I want you to now make a choice here as well. We know side C is 8. Would you like to find side B or side A? You choose. She wants to find side B. Side B is the opposite from that angle, and side C is the hypotenuse from that angle. So she chooses to use sine. Sine of 32 degrees is equal to, how do I write that then? It would be B over 8. How do I solve for B? What do I do to both sides? Times by 8. Sine of 32, and I multiply by 8. And I get 4.24. So B is 4.24. Once I know B, how could you find A? You could use the Pythagorean Theorem. You could. I'm going to use another trig function. A is the adjacent. Which one would you use for adjacent and hypotenuse? Cosine of 32 degrees is is A over 8. So I do 8 cosine of 32, and I get 6.78. Now, my good friend Morgan had an excellent, excellent point. She said, use the Pythagorean Theorem, which you can. I'm going to use the Pythagorean Theorem to quick check my answer. Are you ready? I do 6.78 squared plus 4.24 squared, and I get, if you square root that, do you get a number close to 8? Yeah, you do. This tells me I'm right. There's another thing that tells me I'm right. Which letter is your biggest angle? Which letter is your biggest side? Your biggest angle should match with the biggest side. What's your smallest angle? That should match with your smallest side. See how they match? That's a good way to check to see if you're doing it correctly. Let's do another one together, then you can work on your own. Okay? You start to help me. What do I label that as? So that's C. Where else do you want to put your letters? Where do you want to put A and B? You want A on top? Okay. We'll put B on bottom. So, how about my letters then? Where do they go? What's this one here? B. This is A. This is C. Okay, so what do we know? What can I write down? Good, 90 for C. 48 for A. 20 for lowercase a. Great. All right. You help me. Where do I start? 180 minus 90 minus 48 to give me 42. Great. We're on a roll. Now what? I've got 48 degrees. What is this side? Opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse? Opposite is across. Adjacent and hypotenuse. See that? If you struggle with opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse, I always do the hypotenuse first, and then I list the opposite second. The opposite is always across. Side A, angle A. Those are opposites. Okay, so which one did you want to find, B or C? You make a choice. Do you want to find B or C? You want to find B? So I want to find the adjacent, and I know the opposite. I want to find the adjacent, and I know the opposite. So which do I choose? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Tangent. Tangent of? .48 is 20 over B. Cross multiply, you get 20 equals B tangent of 48. I take 20 and I divide it by the tangent of 48. And I get 18.01. Once you know two sides, you can always use the Pythagorean theorem to find the next side. 20 squared plus 18.01 squared, and square root the answer. 26.91. Today, I only want you to focus on the left-hand side. So problem 3, 4, or 5, 7, 9. Just that. I'm going to come around and help anybody who's confused at this point.